Greetings, everyone. I am Jaffery, and I welcome you to another episode of the CSSPR Conversation series. Today, we are joined by Mr. Javed Hassan to talk on a very important topic, one that I feel is critical to Pakistan's foreign policy direction and discourse going forward. Um, we'll talk about the impact of Pakistan's economic transformation on Pakistan's bid to connect to the region and its efforts to become a geo-economic power in the future. Javed Hassan is an investment banker who is currently the chairman of the National Vocational and Technical Training Commission of Pakistan, which is currently responsible for the largest skill training program in the country. He's also the chairman of the Economic Advisory Group, an independent think tank committed to providing research driven policy inputs on economic issues to policymakers in Pakistan. A graduate of the London Business School and the Imperial College London, he has over 25 years of experience in investment banking and insurance. He has worked in management, leadership, and consultancy positions in the United Kingdom, Hong Kong, and Pakistan. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us to
Well,
talk
thank you, Ali, for having me on. It's a
uh,
pleasure.
and deliberate on a very, very important set of topics that are, which I feel are essential to reorient the debate in Pakistan on the linkage between security, stability, and economic prosperity in Pakistan as well as in the region and beyond. So I'll quickly upfront, I'll just ask you one important question, which I feel will set the tone for our debate going forward. Um, the government of Pakistan has time and again over the past couple of years talked about it trying to focus on economic security and with that trying to look at the imperative of geoeconomics rather than geopolitics. Uh, as someone who looks at these issues very keenly, and as someone who's written a lot on these subjects in the past 2, 3 years, how do you look at the two, geoeconomics and economic security, in the context of Pakistan? And what do you think are the elements and factors that would enhance both economic security and the geoeconomic potential and capacity of Pakistan going forward?
Thank you, Ali, for having me and that very kind introduction of yours. Let's put it very simply. The issue of economic transformation now for Pakistan is an existential one. And this word is used far too often, but given our lack of growth and our capabilities lack of capabilities development, which I've talked about considerably in the document, the new vision for economic transformation in Pakistan. We actually face ever increasingly declining growth rates, GDP growth rates, in an area where there is higher and higher GDP growth rates. Our per capita GDP growth rate now is less than 3%. It's about 2.5%. India is about 4%, Bangladesh about 5%. If you look at places like Vietnam, they go as much as 6%. If we continue doing so, we will have a situation where our per capita income growth will be significantly less than our neighboring countries, barring Afghanistan, and we will be one of the poorer neighbors in the area. That has all sorts of geostrategic implications. So there's the other issue of geoeconomics. Without actually economic transformation, we won't be able to take advantage of the geoeconomic potential that this country has. So these are questions where there's a linkage between strategy, the geostrategic position of Pakistan, the overall security of Pakistan, and its position relative to its neighbors.
Thank you very much. I think you have made a good segue to our discussion. I think it's important for Pakistan to, strike a balance between geo strategy and geoeconomics. Because when you talk about the word geo, um, you are referring to geography, and geographically, Pakistan brings to the table many a strategic advantage for many countries, and we have seen that play a lead role in how Pakistan has evolved as a foreign policy actor, and how its relations with other countries have, panned out. Um, with that in mind, uh, how do we, link the two, geostrategy and geoeconomics? But
Let's
how do we do that?
Okay, let's put it simply. If you do not have a robust economy where there is capabilities within your environment, then you will not be able to take advantage of your geostrategic position. Uh, and that will limit your whole idea of geoeconomics. If we are, in terms of economic complexity, which is something which the Harvard Growth Lab does, if we are ranked and continue to rank one of the lowest in the rankings table. There are 133 countries, and we are ranked about 98. The sad thing is that our ranking has only moved from 102 in 1995 to 98 presently. Whereas a country like Vietnam, which was behind us, 107, is now currently ranked at 65. Similarly, India is ranked at around 48. It used to be ranked 62. That kind of what that complexity, economic complexity index shows is the capabilities within this economy. And those capabilities are what will attract us, different countries, to do business with us, to make linkages with us, to be strategic partners with us. If we don't have those capabilities, there's a strong linkage all through history, not only now, throughout history, between economics and what your strategic interests are. If we fall behind in terms of our economic well-being and ability to grow, we will be also left behind in our ability to take advantage of our very critical strategic position. So there is a direct linkage. And you can imagine, given the hostility that we often find on the eastern border, you can imagine if we are left behind economically, how much they would want to take advantage of that. So these are, as I said, starting, one cannot say it lightly, that these are existential issues, and how we transform our economy so that we can actually sustain high rates of growth and increasing prosperity for our growing population is critically important for our overall strategic direction as a country.
Absolutely. I do think that one's location can only be advantageous so long as you have the requisite power to make to use that location in a manner that affects your people in a positive way. And if you don't have that strength, then that very location would become a disadvantage, and it would become a liability. Um, with that in mind, we do realize that Pakistan has a burgeoning youthful population. And given the fact that you are working on upskilling various segments of our population with a view to letting them, you know, be very
Get employed, get
be
the
a good
skills.
resource for our economy and
Yeah.
for our integration with, let's say, China. How do you look at Pakistan's human resources and their implications on the very context of economic security in the near future?
Okay, as you said, 68% of the population is under 30. And this is probably one of the youngest populations in the region also, barring Afghanistan. We have, our median age of population is around 23 and a half. So we have an immensely young population, which should be a strength for a country like ours. but it will not be a strength unless they are skilled. I use the word skilled as opposed to educated, because far too often in the focus in this country has been about educating and making sure that people have university degrees. In the modern world, in the new paradigm, it is not necessary to focus so much on university qualifications as ensuring that they have the skills which allows them to work internationally and locally to improve our productivity. And one of our great problems has been we have not been investing enough in our youth in terms of skilling them. And we need to do this on an urgent basis. Interestingly, the returns are immense. And we have just found that the Kamyab Jawan Skills for All program, whatever we invest, we seem to get back in terms of earnings of those young people in terms of manifolds within a year. So we trained about 3,000 of our youth went overseas. They have already generated in terms of revenue or for them earnings over 3 billion rupees. The investment in them in these 3,000 was less than about 250 million rupees. So you can just imagine what kind of potential we have, but we have not been investing in skilling our youth. We have not mainstreamed the idea of vocational training and skilling, which is one of the most common things that happens in Japan, Germany, in China, and you have to take it. It's there. It's happening in India. We have to take note. They have realized that skilling is critically important for the for the future of the country.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, please carry on.
I was going to say what it is also is that the level of FDI that you might attract in the country depends on the kind of skills levels you have within the country. So if your skill levels are low, and if your capabilities in terms of connectivity, in terms of, I'm talking about internet connectivity, in terms of just general FTA agreements, linkages of trade agreements with the countries which are nearby you, all these geostrategic advantage is effectively frittered away because you have not actually leveraged all the potential that you have. And that is what, to a large extent, unfortunately, not in this government, but in the previous government has been happening, where we have not actually tried to leverage what potential advantage we could have had.
Absolutely, I do agree with this notion that we have not been able to realize as to what we could offer the world, because we have been reticent to undertake structural reforms, and that of course is a debate in and of itself and requires many consultative parlays. So we do see the government committed to leveraging its economic strength and potential to increase its footprint and clout in Central Asia. But for that, peace in Afghanistan is absolutely paramount. So you know that Afghanistan is in the grips of a very bad and debilitating economic crisis. How will that affect Pakistan and also its capacity to link itself to Central Asia? And with that, another link question is that we have to offer a lot more to Central Asia than we are doing currently. So how and what kind of economic transformation is required to do that effectively?
Okay, let's put it this way. What we need is an openness in the economy. We need basically within the region, barring India for different reasons, but with China, with Afghanistan, with Central Asian countries, near zero tariff regime where trade is automatic and free. So one of the things, this will mean some relocation, some industries suffering, but other industries will prosper. So what we need is to effectively create a trade bloc, something similar to European Union, where there is virtually no barriers in people coming in and out in terms of trading, and it becomes much more easy for our goods to go to Afghanistan, their goods to come to us. That will create synergies. There's the law of comparative advantages. Whereas in some things we may be doing well, but other countries will do better. So let them do what they can do best, and let us do what we can do best. And what we'll do is overall pie will grow. So we really should look at doing these linkages, and for that, what we need to do is remove the trade barriers that they are. It is important to note also that these trade barriers, we need to increase the linkages not only within this region, but globally as well, especially ASEAN countries and the recently created RCEP. That is something we need to do, not for the sake of just doing it, because it will improve our productivity. It will mean resource allocation to the most productive sectors, and it will make Pakistan a center for actual production. Because if we have those linkages with ASEAN and RCEP countries, many manufacturers may want to come and produce here because it may become an export base. But it won't become an export base if we have basically high barriers for trade with those countries.
Absolutely. One cannot emphasize the importance of multi-pronged connectivity initiatives that a country like Pakistan must take. And for that, we need to have a clear pathway in our mind as to.
Can I just add, Ali? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean there has to be a lot of seriousness about this. We have to think in terms of, say, ASEAN. Britain came out of European Union, and it happened just in the last 1 year, couple of years actually. But they already have an ambassador sitting dedicated in ASEAN to be able to have free trade agreements with ASEAN. Where's our similar representative to have free trade agreements with ASEAN countries? We really need to take this as a priority. It is as much of a priority as our security issues. And this should be treated like a security issue rather than being simply a trade matter.
Absolutely. So we have time and again assured the Americans that we are not into bloc politics, and we don't want to adopt an either or approach when it comes to our relations with China and the US. And we also want to have a relation with the US which is free from the constrictions imposed by Afghanistan. And we want healthy trading ties with the United States of America. That leaves us with a very important question. How can Pakistan enhance its trading ties with the US while also keeping CPEC going and making it stronger?
I think first we have to prioritize trade as being as one of our number one security issues. Forgive the analogy, but when like going into a party, we must learn to dance with many partners rather than just one. And the truth is, we really, while obviously our iron brother friend China is our critical strategic interest, we need to trade with as many countries as possible, and especially the US. So we have to be careful in our wording. We have to be sensible in what we say about America. And we also want to do everything possible to increase our free trade agreement possibilities with European Union and America. These are big trading blocs. We as a nation need to be trading with them, and we should also be encouraging them to invest. Now, there's obviously the issue of CPEC. At some point, I believe America will realize that CPEC, the Belt and Road Initiative, is a reality which they cannot deny. And hopefully, once they start accepting that reality, rather than trying to undermine it, even the United States may want to participate in that party. So let's hope for the best. And in the meanwhile, try and build up relations in terms of trading. with United States, European Union, and as I keep saying, as many regional blocks, trading blocks as possible. It's critically important that we should dedicate people towards this, just as in the matter as we may have for a person, interlocutor for Kashmir affairs, we should have for trading affairs with each of the trading blocks.
That's a very interesting suggestion that you have put forward, and I think um, it's worth a try, if I were to put it mildly. We do understand that uh, there is a strong linkage between foreign policy, economics, and security, and this government has many a time tried to articulate the linkage in no uncertain terms. We have been told by our national security advisor that Pakistan is very much looking forward to giving the world powers economic basis rather than military basis. And for that,
Yeah.
I think it is important that we give a very propitious investment environment in Pakistan. How can we do that? How can the investment climate become more propitious for all countries across the divide?
Okay. We have shared with you the document which the Economic Advisory Group has produced, the new vision for economic transformation for Pakistan. There are some critical things that we need to do. One of them is we have been talking about regional connectivity. The other thing that we really have to do is really make this a much more market-based, freely competitive industry, so that resource allocation is not driven or forced or incentivized towards those industries which are not internationally competitive. We need to now realize that for our survival, that we need to be internationally competitive, and industries which are not able to survive by being internationally competitive should gradually be phased out of the system. That is what China did. If you either shape up or you ship out, and we really need to understand, so should be with much of our industrial sector. Unfortunately, much of our industrial sector is ossified, the capabilities are limited, and we have not made it more sophisticated. So we need to increase diversity, we need to increase the sophistication of products, we need to be focused. So the government should be effectively, if it does provide any subsidies or benefits, it should be towards making it a much greater diversity of products, much more sophisticated products, and a greater number of markets. We can't just keep selling to the same people, because you become more dependent on those same people. So I think in terms of policy actions, what we need to do is really three things: diversification, sophistication, and many more markets than we have. And it's almost unfortunate that while we have such great relationships with China, we have not taken advantage of the FTA, because we have simply not focused on what potential there might be in China. For that, you need to have linkages, you need to have information. The government doesn't always have to do things by providing subsidy. And the big problem is it is the incentive structures that exist within the system of the economy work towards less competitiveness, less efficiency, and we need now to reverse that. If we don't reverse this, it will have, as I said, a vicious effect, cyclical effect on the rest of the matters.
Thank you for a very comprehensive answer, and one that should really help our policymakers think long and hard about what went wrong and what needs to be corrected, and that too very quickly.
I'll give you another. In the 80s, our balance of payment constrained growth, because whenever we start growing, as we have recently found, we run into a balance of payments crisis, because we don't have enough capabilities or capacity to produce stuff in the country. So we start having to import once growth rate goes up. In the 70s and 80s, it was around 6%, in fact, higher than 6%, 6.3, 6.4%. In the 90s, that gradually fell to about 5%. Presently, our GDP growth potential, so to speak, or balance of payment constraint growth is no more than 4%. It's that various figures. It's something about 3.8%. Anytime we have GDP growth that goes much above 4%, we start having a balance of payments crisis. Basically, our trade imbalances go out of whack and we get run into difficult. And that's largely because we have not produced the capabilities, we haven't produced the sophistication in industries, we are not exporting enough. Let's compare a smaller country than us, Vietnam, which is, I think, population of about 80, 90 million, exports 350 billion dollars of worth of exports. We are still struggling to do 30 billion. Vietnam in 2000 actually exported less than Pakistan. So, we need to think about how, what have we done wrong that we are effectively not producing stuff which the rest of the world may want. And it's not always simply because of security. It's also largely because we have not allowed our industries to be competitive.
So there is one catchphrase that we could glean from your conversation: reform, and then we again would say reform, and then again reform. So there's one word that has to be kept in mind, and then follow through in letter and spirit, because
I would say, in fact,
it's not by words alone.
Yeah, I would say even go transform. We need to transform now. His reform is just too gentle. If we don't transform our economy, we are heading down a path which is quite dangerous.
Absolutely. So you briefly delved into our relations with China, and obviously, when we talk about our relations with China, we our mind goes to the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is a whole package, one that gives Pakistan a great chance of transforming, as you say, its economy and the way it goes about its economic, its approach to to economy and trade. Uh, how do you assess the current state of CPEC, and what do you think the project has in store for Pakistan, and what Pakistan must do to increase, to shift the balance of advantages and advantages towards towards its favor?
Look, the strategic relations are, I think, timeless and so deep that probably we do not need to worry about it at all. But we could actually build on it and make that strategic relationship much stronger if we actually had much better commercial and trading links with China. And for that, we need to, as I said, we need to show this country to have the capabilities that efficiency seeking FDI comes from China, not just to capture this market, but to actually use this as an export base to the rest of the world. So you should have more and more Chinese industry come and invest in Pakistan. You said how it's going. I think there has been a period of hiatus in the last few years, but with the new focus in it, there's been a considerable movement, and I think we should see an acceleration in the process of CPEC development. What we need to do is effectively work with Chinese industrial complexes, the Chinese companies, entrepreneurs, and show them that Pakistan is an exciting and efficient place to manufacture from, to export to the rest of the world. That's the only way. That's, they're not very friendly, the Chinese and Vietnamese, yet the Chinese are big investors in Vietnam. We need to make sure that the Chinese can see Pakistan as not simply as a strategic friend, but also as a friend which they have commercial interest in.
Yes, I think our future lies in our hands. It is our decisions that will determine as to where we are going. If we take right decisions, we'll definitely turn a page in our economic journey. And if we don't take the right decisions, then obviously we'll be behind the eight ball. And being behind the eight ball in an environment where your enemies are already dominating and ruling the roosts, so that's not an option for Pakistan. Um, Quickly, it's important. We have now bringing all of this together. Uh, the government has also tried to look towards Africa, a continent that we never focused on before. Uh, and that Pakistan is trying to do so through a concept which we know as economic diplomacy.
Mhm.
Economic diplomacy, how do induct diplomacy economics into the diplomatic framework, and what are the do's and don'ts of economic diplomacy that Pakistan should take into account?
Well, if you think about it in history, much of Britain's expansion was about economic diplomacy. Much of the ambassador's role was to develop trading linkages, sometimes exploitative, but really. So diplomacy and trade have gone hand in hand forever. And I think our diplomacy should really be looking towards exploring economic opportunities in Africa and other places. But Africa is in many ways virgin territory. There's a lot of opportunities there. The do's are that we really should be must make sure our entrepreneurs have access to the information, know what the markets are, what the products are demanded, what particular type of investments we can make to make sure that there is more exports that can go to Africa. So those are the do's. The don'ts are obviously not rely on aid of any sort to be able to export to Africa. We should rely on the fact that we can do it ourselves. We should not depend on simply having political relationships. There should be trade relationships, and those themselves will then develop into diplomatic relationships. So sometimes let's not just focus the fact that if this diplomatic relationships are not strong, we should not assume there cannot be trading relationships. Sometimes you can have actually almost hostile diplomatic relations with countries and yet have strong trading relationship. So those are the very simple do's and don'ts. But it's very good, and I must say it's encouraging that the government is thinking along these lines and the government is focused on this. And Africa is going to be one of the largest markets in this century. Just Nigeria probably will be the third largest population by the 2070, 2080. So really, if we look at the future, Africa is going to be one of the biggest markets and should not be, and one of the youngest markets. So it has to be a key area of focus for us.
You talked about British history, and then I'll not go as far as saying scramble for Africa, but we need to have our own scramble for Africa because
Definitely, we need to scramble for Africa, but not in the manner which imperial powers did.
And we can only ignore Africa at our own peril. I use this very strong word peril because I think India is doing well in Africa, China is doing really well in Africa, and it's about time that we also shift our focus in a very strategic manner towards Africa. But then again, your narrative is only as good as your product. So it's about you're trying to improve and ameliorate your product. If the product is not good, you cannot gloss over your inefficiency.
Can I just say, Ali, if the government stops subsidizing and protecting industry, the industry will have the capability to develop itself very quickly products and sophistication and international competitive. If your incentive mechanisms within the economy are such that actually help you remain ossified, then you remain ossified. What needs to happen is there has to be an incentive structure to actually change, improve, become more competitive globally, and to explore other markets. So it is entirely up to the government in that way to actually change the very mindset of what industries are all about.
And since you use the word ossified, I think that that has got to do a lot with our mindset. If that is not ossified, then I think we can really improve by leaps and bounds. So thank you very much, sir, for a very wide-ranging and a very enthralling conversation. This has enabled us to understand how things are shaping up, how things should shape up, and how they must shape up if we are to become a true geo-economic power to reckon with.
Indeed.
Absent our ability to undertake reforms and our commitment towards recalibrating the way we have gone about taking our economy forward, we will not be able to, translate this vision, which is a very good one, I must say, into a reality. And if you can't translate your vision into a reality, then there is no point in talking about all these things
Wonderful ideas.
in public.
If I may so say so, and forgive me for plugging the document from Economic Advisory Group, I would recommend the ossified minds that there are, please take a few minutes. It's a very short document, only 20 pages. The new vision for economic transformation by the Economic Advisory Group. I strongly recommend, please have a read through it, be critical about it, give feedback about it. Ali has been very kind to tweet it a number of times on his handle. Please use that. It's there on a website, and I think most people who read it will find something interesting in it.
Thank you, especially those who don't have an economics background like myself. So I thank you once again. I look forward to having more such conversations with you on economics, security, and its inexorable linkage in the future.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you for having me.